first hallmark, as I call it, of a good iron mining law would be to establish clear and achievable standards for permit issuance. A successful iron mining law must include objective standards and criteria that define regulatory requirements with specificity. An applicant should not have to guess what the standards are or have permit approvals hinge on the subjective interpretations of permit review staff. I think this is a critical piece. I think that what Mr. Williams described in his testimony is that if, whatever you establish, we'll try and find an engineer a way to meet it, but you've got to be clear what the standards are. Second point is establish a predictable permitting process. By that I mean include a well-defined process with permitting milestones that describe with precision what information is required, when the information is required, and when an application is deemed complete. Third, specify a defined time frame for DNR's permit review. The bill, I guess, from our perspective, we need to avoid a repeat of what happened with the Crandon mining proposal. And if you recall that, it went on for nearly a decade, where we had an open-ended process. The DNR over that time period never gave a yes or a no, and the applicant just gave up and pulled the plug and withdrew the application. I think if we can do what other states like Minnesota and Michigan have done and establish in the statutes a set time frame, that'll help promote the kind of certainty that I think will attract investment in our state. Fourth, recognize that iron mining is different. I think Bill Williams and others have done a good job of describing the difference between iron oxide mining and sulfide-based mining, and how iron mining has a much smaller environmental footprint because you don't have the acid rock drainage issues. You're not using chemicals to separate the metal from the rock. You're using magnets. And we would just ask that the legislature take note of that and craft an iron mining regulatory framework that accounts for those differences. And finally, I would ask the committee to consider limiting opportunities for costly and time-consuming litigation. Everybody is entitled to their day in court, and iron mining should be no different. But we have a process right now with the contested case hearing process where it's a very expensive and time-consuming quasi-judicial proceeding that at the end of the day is not even binding upon the agency anyway. It has become a costly, time-consuming step on the way to circuit court. What we would ask you to consider is if these disputes end up in circuit court anyway, and the contested case review within the agency isn't binding, let's skip that expensive step. Let's remove that delay from the process. Let's give an aggrieved person, whoever that may be, whether it's the applicant or someone else, the ability to just go directly to circuit court to have their grievances heard.